It's Friday night here in Los Angeles, and I don't know what it is about this city, but Friday night always has this like vibe to it. You know, everyone's getting ready to go out, have some drinks, have some food. There's a buzz in the air. I am here meeting with my better half to visit our favorite restaurant in the city, probably in the world, actually. But this is not a restaurant review channel. Instead, we're going to talk about something else that happens on Friday nights, and that's Hustler Casino Live, high stakes, especially on Fridays. And I just got done playing a high stakes Friday at Hustler. So we're going to talk about those hands. And as a bonus, we're also going to talk about Wednesday night, where I played 5 hours of 25, 50, 100, also at Hustler. Two very action-packed streams this week. So I figured instead of splitting them up into two videos, we're just going to package that all into what you're seeing right now. It's going to be the best hands from my week, and that's all I'm going to give away during this intro. So you guys enjoy the poker. I'm going to go enjoy some dinner, and I'll check in with you guys after that. All right, guys, here we go once again, picking up the action into this 25-50 game where we're actually around an hour and a half into the stream before I pick up anything playable. There's a double straddle on this hand for 200. I make it 500 with pocket sixes in late position. And then it gets to Henry in one of the straddles. I think the second straddle? First straddle? I don't know. There's a lot of straddles here. But anyway, he raises it up with aces. Everything makes sense so far. He makes it 2200. Back to me in late position, and with a pocket pair, we have a no-brainer call here. Off to a flop, which comes down amazing for pocket sixes. It's 6-3 deuce with two clubs. And of course, top set is nice almost always, but it's especially nice here because I could have so many bluffs on this kind of board texture. There's straight draws, flush draws, combo draws, all sorts of stuff going on here. So when Henry leads out for a bet of 2600, I'm going to go ahead and raise right away, like I said, because I could just have so many bluffs in this situation. Got to raise it up with the value as well. So I make it 7600. Worth noting that this game starts at a 30k cap until the halfway point. After that, it becomes uncapped, but since we're not there yet, I'm only chilling with like a 30k starting stack or so. Back around to Henry now, and he decides that he's just going to go with it, which I can understand. You know, he doesn't want to get bluffed, and since I don't have that much behind, he just raises enough to essentially commit me. Not quite putting me all in, so I raise all in myself. He calls, and we are off to the races. I turn it over right away. He's in bad shape with aces. We run it just once, and he is unable to improve. So we start the night off a little slow, having to wait 90 minutes for the first important pot for me, but it's definitely a good one, and it was worth waiting for because we're getting $67,000 pushed our direction. The very next shuffle, this hand goes down where I raise it up to $300 with ace king, another very playable hand pre-flop. Get a couple of callers before Audie in the straddle decides that he is all in for 17,000 and change. A huge jam, even though it's not a giant stack. I mean, I made it 300. There's a couple of callers, and he goes all in for almost 18k. It's a pretty big raise. Ace king offsuit is not the best hand in the world, but against Audie, who definitely gets out of line sometimes, I'm not folding. So I make the call. Everyone else folds, and he has ace four suited. I show him the bad news and ask him how many times he wants to run it. He prefers twice, and we are in good shape to suddenly win a bunch of money in just two hands. But of course, we have to hold with ace king. Can we do it versus ace four suited? Let's see. On the first run out, we do hit top pair. Audie has a straight draw and a backdoor flush draw, but the 5 on the turn isn't going to help him hit that flush. Now we're just looking to avoid a deuce. And it comes another 5, which I didn't realize was enough to chop this pot up. That's right, we both have 5s full of aces, which is the same hand. That's not good for us because now there's a possibility we get scooped since he could hit a 4, a straight, or a flush on this second board. And we're off to a bad start on that one as well. We've got 2 hearts on the flop. Turn card is the ace of diamonds, so all we need to do here is avoid a 4 or a heart. but it's not meant to be. The 8 of hearts comes on the second river, and just like that, we lose the second run. What this means is we get quartered. That means he wins 3/4 of this pot. I win 1/4 of it, essentially doubling him up for half of his stack size or 2/3 of his stack size. Math is hard. I'm not entirely sure. It's a late night, guys. I'm recording this at like 2 in the morning, so bear with me. All you need to know is I lost around $12,000 or something in this hand. That's not cool. I had ace king. I mean, what the hell? Isn't poker supposed to be fair? Moving right along, in this next one, I have a much more fair hand to battle with. Pocket kings. This one, there's a raise from PP to 300, a bunch of callers. I am, of course, not going to call. Time to put in the raise. I make it $2,800 to go. Unfortunately, this creates a bit of a calling train behind me where PP calls, Henry calls, and, well, that's about it. Just 2 callers, but still not the most fun being deep stacked out of position versus 2 players, even with a hand like Pocket Kings. But we get a really nice flop. It's Jack 4-3 with 2 hearts. That looks good enough to me, so I continue betting. I put in a bet of $5,000, which is around half pot. PP is out of there with his ace high, but Henry has flopped himself a gutter, which is good enough to continue in position, at least according to him. He makes the call, and we're off to a turn, which is the deuce of diamonds. Not really my favorite card because the obvious straight draw gets there, which would be 6-5 suited. And as you guys can see, I wasn't too far off since Henry actually has 7-6 suited. But since 6-5 gets there, there's also some, sets he might slow play on the flop. And of course, ace-5 is in the realm of possibilities. I decide to pot control here with a check. I do want to go on record and say that continuing to bet here seems completely fine to me. An overpair is always, or almost always, a very strong hand. And Henry could definitely call with worse, but I decide to check and see if he wants to bluff or potentially value bet a stronger hand, if he does have one. But instead, Henry checks it back, which looks pretty good to me, off to a river, which is the 10 of spades. So I think kings are almost always the best hand at this point, but the question is, what is the best way to play these kings? And of course, you could argue that just betting here makes sense because I have overpair, so I bet. Nothing wrong with that logic, but I know Henry likes to bluff when he gets checked to, especially in big pots. Plus, he might also value bet a hand like a jack, or even go for some thin value with ace 10, who knows. I felt like he might have checked back the turn with the flush draw though, and if he does have a flush draw, I don't want to remove the opportunity for him to bluff, which I would probably do if I bet myself. So a bit risky here to check again, but that's what I do. And luckily it works out because Henry has 7 high. He's definitely going to bet with that hand, trying to steal this one away from, ace king or ace queen, hands like that, which I might play this way. But unfortunately for him, as he slides in $13,000, I am not folding this hand. I call right away with kings. He gives me the head shake saying, yeah, you got it. I turn over my cards, never really interested in making people show losing hands. And sure enough, kings are good, so we scoop this pot as well. Now for this next hand, we are going to fast forward over 2 hours. That's right, guys, that's what card death looks like. 2 hours of pretty much nothing going on for me. Until this one comes up where I look down at 9-8 offsuit on the button, finally a premium holding. But jokes aside, we were playing the stand-up game, which means if you don't win a hand, you pay money to the rest of the table. It's a little more intricate than that, but that's the gist of it. And honestly, if you don't get it by now, I've spoken about it so many times, you got to go outside, touch some grass, and, study how this game works. But anyway, L makes it $500 to go from late position, and I decide to spring into action with a re-raise up to $1,500. I'm essentially just playing the fact that I have position and somewhat connected cards, but obviously if we face another raise, we're going to have to let this one go. But that's not what happens. Instead, it gets back around to L, who makes the call. So we're heads up in position to a flop of King, Queen, 5, Rainbow. Looks okay to me. We could have all sorts of strong stuff on this board texture. So when he checks, I decide to continue betting small. Much like I would with any value hand, I put in $700, and L makes the call. So we're off to a turn, which is the 10 of hearts. L checks again, and even though we might be up against a strong hand here, like a slow played aces or maybe even ace king, he might have top 2, whatever, he could also have plenty of hands that call the flop, which just have to fold against a turn bet. And that includes hands like queen 9 suited, maybe ace 5 suited. He might have a hand like, I don't know, pocket jacks, whatever. I guess pocket jacks are open-ended, but they're out of position. I don't know, it's tough. Either way, L checks, and I decide to continue applying pressure to those kinds of hands. Also, I could still have a lot of strong stuff here, which I think he'll know. So I throw in an overbet here. That's how much I would bet if I had a hand like a set, 2-pair, ace jack. So I think doing it with 9 high also makes sense. $7,000 into the middle. The pot is only 4,800, so I'm hoping to put him in a tough spot, but L is not to be deterred with his top pair and open-ender, which makes sense. You know, he has a pretty standard hand to continue with. I wouldn't be loving it in his shoes, but folding seems a little too tight. And he seems to be on board with that because he once again makes the call. Tosses in $7,000, and I think it's obvious now that we're in trouble. But the river bails me out. It's the jack of spades. You could argue fortune favors the bold, and this is yet another example of that. We end up rivering a straight. Obviously, we lose to any ace, but when you think about the way this hand has played out, I think it's essentially impossible for him to have an ace unless he has exactly ace-jack, but he wouldn't have ace-king given how it played pre-flop. He wouldn't really have ace-queen after calling the turn. He wouldn't have ace-10. Ace-5 would also have folded the turn. There's just so many hands that contain an ace, which I expect to have either 4-bet pre-flop or folded the turn. But given how this exact hand has played out, I don't think he's going to have an ace often enough for me to be concerned, especially since he only has a pot-sized bet behind. So when he checks, I decide to shove for value with the bottom end of a straight here, targeting 2-pair, sets, anything like that, maybe even single pairs that just don't believe whatever I'm selling. Of course, sometimes I will run into, you know, the higher straight, and that's just life. I'm okay with that if it does happen, but I don't think that's enough reason to potentially miss out on some value. So I switch from bluffing to value betting. I shove all in for 18.5. And now L goes into the tank for what feels like forever. This guy thought about this decision for like 3 or 4 minutes. But I guess it was time well spent because in the end he does make a disciplined fold with his 2-pair. Nice fold from L. I guess he played it perfect because he called when he was ahead and folded when he was behind. But I get lucky this time, and obviously I'll happily take it. And with that, we arrive at the hand of the night, or at least the hand of this first night, since, you know, there's 2 nights. Dr. P limps in for 100, and I raise it up to 500 with pocket 9s. 2 red 9s. Looks like a standard hand to raise with, but then PP, a couple players to my left, springs into action with a 3-bet, up to $2,000. Audie cold calls this 3-bet from the big blind, and it gets back around to me with these 9s, and I'm thinking to myself, even though I expect 9s to be the best hand more often than not, I don't know if a 4-bet really accomplishes much. Essentially because I expect PP to only continue with hands that have me in rough shape and fold out all the bad stuff. Audie being in this pot isn't super concerning, and these 9s kind of play themselves, you know? You hit a set, life is good. If you don't and there's a bunch of overcards, you can just fold. So I keep things simple and just call, and we go 3 ways to a flop, which is an absolute miracle. It's 9-8-8. Top boat right away on the flop. Running hot tonight. It's been a while since I flopped a full house, and it's been an even longer while since my opponent flopped strips at the same time. PP's pretty deep here, 136,000 and change left in his stack. He started with like 30K, so he's up a bunch of money. I think he's feeling pretty confident tonight, but this is definitely going to put a halt to that because we have one of the biggest coolers on our hands that we've seen in a while. Audie checks, obviously, with his 6s. I decide to check, and now PP bets $2,500. Audie puts in an optimistic call here, but when it gets to me, I think raising right away is the best idea. Calling, obviously, completely fine, but when you're super deep, I like raising a lot of hands. That includes bluffs, obviously, to apply pressure across future streets, and of course value because you just have to build pots when you have strong hands. It's really not rocket science. That's how most of the money is made, and it's not every day you flop a full house. So I decide to raise it up right away. I make it $11,000 to go, asking myself how much would I make it with a straight draw or a flush draw or whatever kind of bluff I might have in this spot. 11,000 seems like a good number, so that's what I do. PP thinks for a bit and makes the call, which I'm obviously happy to see. And Audie gets out of there with his pocket 6s. They finally go in the muck. So heads up going to a turn, which isn't my favorite, really. It's the Jack of Hearts. Now you're probably wondering, what the hell does it matter? You flopped a full house. And I get that, but I think this card makes it a little bit scarier for PP to hang on if he has overpairs. Let's say a hand like 10-7 suited, it now gets there. Pocket jacks might check raise the flop once in a while and now turn a boat. I could have hands like Queen 10 once in a blue moon that check raise the flop as a gut shot and 2 overs. So yeah, it's not my favorite. I would have preferred a low disconnected card, but we work with what we're given. Pot's 30,000 and I have 115k behind. And I'm thinking to myself, how do I get all my chips into the middle and get called? Obviously, the most clear answer is to just bet big right now and then bet big again on the river, right? I mean, how else would you play this hand? Well, even though that makes perfect sense, I've played enough with PP to know that he might be able to see through that because it looks exactly like what it is, a full house or trips or a straight or some type of value hand. So instead of taking the standard route, which by the way, I don't think is a bad idea, I'm just saying what was going through my mind at the time. Instead of taking the standard route, I decided to get really weird and go for a huge bet. And my thinking behind that was, this is going to look a lot like a combo draw or some sort of bluff that's trying to apply max pressure. PP's been on a heater tonight. He's been 3-betting me a lot. And I think the table dynamic up to this point was such that he might get the feeling I'm taking a stand, so to speak. Obviously, that's not what's going on. I actually have it, but I think that's all good reason to assemble a big bet here and try to make it look like a bluff. If he has an 8, I don't think he'll fold. If he has an overpair, I still don't really think he'll fold. And with all that in mind, I jam all in for $115,000, a massive overbet with a super strong hand. Not something you see every day. It's very rare, even for me. I don't think I've seen this before. Really ever. It's such a weird play and it's obviously so risky, right? Because if PP does end up folding an overpair, a jack, even an 8, then I just look like a complete fool. But I was willing to take that risk because I also think this bet makes it more likely that we get called. PP now goes in the tank and he certainly didn't expect this. I barely expected it really. But eventually with his 8-5 offsuit, he decides to keep me honest and make the call. That's exactly what we were hoping for, and just like that, we have a $261,000 pot, over $250,000 in the middle, and he's only got 1 out. He asked to run it twice, as per usual. I'm fine with that. All we need to do is dodge the last 8 in the deck. We managed to do so on the first river, as well as the second river. And that, guys, is how I won the biggest pot of the night. In fact, I think it's probably the biggest pot I've played at Hustler in a couple of weeks or months, maybe. So this one was great. And just like that, we're up a bunch of money on this otherwise innocent looking Wednesday night. That was a wrap for me. But with that, let's move to night number 2, which is the high stakes 5,100, 200 straddles. In fact, we ended up playing 100, 200 with a 200 big blind ante. So a really big game here. Let's get into it. In this one, we start with ace queen offsuit, raise it up to 300 bucks. Only 5,100 this hand, you know, we're starting off a little tame. PP makes the call in the hijack, and then airball 3-bets on the button to 1,200 bucks. Back around to me, and you could kind of go either way with ace queen offsuit here. Calling is okay, but sometimes putting in the 4-bet makes sense, especially against aggressive players, simply for value and, you know, to balance out the times that we've got aces and kings and stuff. So I go for it this time. I bump it up to 4,800 bucks. PP's out of there, but now when it gets to airball with 6-2 suited, he's not done with it just yet. In fact, he's putting in another raise. Almost a min raise though, $11,000 to go. Neither of us are super deep here. Getting such a good price, I think it's completely fine to call. Even raising again is something that crossed my mind, but instead of getting all fancy and trying to get into some pre-flop pissing war, I decided to play my hand a little more normal and just call. Let's go to a flop and see what happens. It's 10 high, 10-8-3 with 2 hearts. Not the best. I have the ace of diamonds, not the ace of hearts. Would have been better if, you know, my suits were the other way around, but either way, I check and now airball bets really small. 4,400, which is less than a quarter pot. Can't go anywhere for that price just yet. We have 2 overs and some backdoor possibilities, so I make the call, and we see the 4 of spades on the turn. Still no help to my hand whatsoever, so I check again, and now airball assembles another bet. And here's the thing, like, I know I might be getting bluffed from time to time. obviously this is one of those times. My man has 6 deuce suited. Credit to him. He certainly has no fear. But the thing is, I could just have so many better hands, and that's just a way to make life easy. If I could have better hands, then I'm completely comfortable folding a hand like ace queen off in this spot. So I let it go, and Airball gets away with absolute murder. 6 high takes it down. He kind of dunks on me here. Nice hand to him. And with that, we fast forward 2.5 hours. That's right. I bet you didn't see that coming. But once again, for some reason, we are experiencing some card death on tonight's stream. That's fine, though. I try to just hang out and stay as patient as I possibly can. But anyway, in this one, we're playing 50, 100, 200. There's a bunch of limpers, and I look down at 7-5 off. In the final straddle, I decide to check it, so we go 5 ways to a board of Jack, 8, 6, 2 spades. That's an open-ended straight draw for me, as well as a backdoor flush draw, as well as a backdoor straight flush draw. That's right, talk about overselling my hand, huh? Anyway, Airball checks, Wesley checks, Mike X checks, I check, Dr. P checks. That's right, 5 players check, so we're off to a turn, which is an interesting one. It's the 9 of spades. Brings in a potential flush, but it also gives me a straight. And hey, that aforementioned straight flush draw, we're kind of getting there. Airball checks, Wesley checks, Mike X checks. I'm going to bet now because I have a straight and, a flush draw, so why not? I put in 500 bucks. Dr. P calls my 500 bucks, and now Airball puts in a check raise from the small blind, which I can't say I absolutely love with his exact hand, but I can say that I love the effort. It's pretty ballsy here with 2 red cards. He makes it $3,500 to go. I, of course, can't fold just yet, even though we might be up against a flush. That's fine. We have a straight and we have outs. So I make the call. Dr. P calls as well. 3 of us going to a river, which, believe it or not, comes the 10 of spades. A lot of favorable boards on today's vlog. I'm happy to see it. It's a straight flush. It's been a while since I hit one of those. It's not a huge pot or anything, but it still always feels great to hit a straight flush. Airball decides to give up now and check, or maybe he's not giving up. Maybe he has the ace of spades. I don't know, because I can't see his cards. But it gets to me, and of course, with a straight flush, I am not going to risk this one checking through, especially when Dr. P is prone to checking back some decently strong hands. So I decide to assemble a bet of $9,000. Gets to Dr. P on the button now, and he's got the 2nd nut flush, or is it the 3rd nut flush? I don't know, debatable. But he's got the king of spades and goes into the tank, and I kind of understand this. He knows I could have the ace of spades. He knows that Airball might be laying in the weeds with the ace of spades, so it's kind of a difficult spot, but I think a call here is probably the way to go. I could definitely have some bluffs, and king of spades is a strong hand here, but instead, Dr. P thinks about it for quite some time and takes the conservative route, lets it go, which is disastrous for me, of course, and then Airball folds as well. So that kind of sucks because I made an awesome hand and got no action. Nice fold from Dr. P. Airball does not look me up with king high this time, and we don't get much value. But still, straight flush is a straight flush. Not bad. In this next one, Dr. P raises up the action to 300. Airball 3 bets to 1,000, and then it gets to me in the big blind looking down at queen jack offsuit. This is the type of hand that maybe 1% of the time I like using as a 4-bet bluff, and that's simply because it's 2 Broadway cards and we have some removal, but not very good removal actually. Mainly just thinking to myself, it's okay to use this hand very rarely, and this is going to be one of those times. So I bump it up to 3,500 bucks. Dr. P is out of there, but Airball is not. He makes the call in position as we go to a flop of Jack 6 deuce rainbow. Looks good to me because I have top pair, so I bet 3,000 bucks, and now Airball raises to 8,000. This man was really getting after it today. Got to tip your hat, but the problem with that is it's not going to work when your opponents actually have something, and this time I do have something. So I make the call, and we go to a turn card, which is the 3 of hearts. Now he makes a pair, so when I check, he checks it back because he's got some showdown value. And then we see the ace of diamonds on the river. So given how this hand is played out, I think it's likely he's got some sort of something now, to try to get to the river. The thing is, he might have some ace highs. Hands like ace deuce suited, ace 3 suited. He could have just the random ace that, raises the flop as a bluff. So I'm not loving this card. I think a block bet here is completely fine. I think a big bet here is kind of cool as a merge, and I think a check is the standard route. So I decide to just take the standard route and check it. Airball checks it back, and we win a $23,000 pot with queen jack offsuit. Not really recommended to play my hand super often. It's not a great hand, especially deep stacked, but this time it works out. About 15 minutes later, this one comes up where we are once again battling versus Airball. I make it 500 from the cutoff. Airball defends the big blind, and we go heads up to a flop of 9-7-6 with 2 diamonds. Pretty awful board for me. I expect him to lead out sometimes on this kind of board, but he doesn't. He checks it, and I check it back because, let's face it, we're going to get check raised a lot on this kind of board. So I go to a turn, which is the 4 of clubs. 2 flush draws out there, many different straight draws. Airball now bets $2,000, which is an overbet. But I'm looking at the board and I'm thinking to myself, he could just have so much dust given how this one is played out. He called pre-flop so he could have hands like Queen 3 suited, any naked 8, Jack 5 suited. He could have Jack Deuce suited, 10 Deuce suited. You guys get the idea. There's just so much stuff he could have. Jack 10 offsuit, for example. Yeah, he could have a straight, he could have 2 pair, he could have sets, but he has so many bluffs that I think calling at least once with king high makes some sense. That's what I do, and we go to a river, which is the deuce of diamonds. Now Airball decides to bet $8,000, which is another overbet. And it's weird because on the turn, he was essentially representing a straight, 2 pair, or a set because he overbet, right? But now the flush comes in, and he overbets anyway. So are you saying that now you made a flush? Or are you saying that you're betting these 2 pair and set type of hands anyway, despite the flush coming in on the river? I don't really know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's certainly viable that he could have overbet with a flush draw on the turn and then bets it on the river once he gets there. But I have a diamond in my hand, and I'm not really buying that story. Plus, I don't think he's taking this sizing with a single pair, you know? So even though it's a little sketchy, I decide to make a hero call here with king high, thinking that we're still beating a bunch of random bluffs. And sure enough, I toss it in. Airball says, you're good. So I turn over the king high, and this one feels pretty good. $21,000 pot getting pushed our direction. We managed not to get bluffed for once by this very aggressive player. Next, this hand comes up where I raise it up to $500. 7-6 suited. That's a beautiful hand. Dr. P calls on the button, and then Airball re-raises himself with queen jack offsuit. He makes it 3,000 from the small blind. Wesley folds in the big blind, and I, of course, make the call. Happy to continue here with a suited connector in position. Dr. P is out of there, so we go heads up to a flop once again versus Nick. It comes 7-3 deuce with 2 clubs. That looks pretty good to me. We've got top pair as well as some backdoor straight possibilities. Of course, still losing to overpairs, which is the problem with hands like these. When you hit top pair, you're like, I don't know if I love it. But it is top pair nevertheless, so when Airball continues for a bet of $4,000, I am not going anywhere just yet. Could even raise once in a while, but considering that his flop bet is pretty big relative to the pot, I don't think it makes as much sense this time. So I make the call, and we don't get the best turn card. It's the Queen of Hearts. It does bring in another flush draw as well. Plus, he could just have a queen very, very often. He could have hands like ace queen, king queen, queen jack. Y'all get the idea. All sorts of random Broadway hands that stab the flop and now improve to top pair. And Airball seems to like it as well because he bets $15,000, a pot-sized bet. And I don't know, I was just not feeling it, not loving this situation. We might be getting owned by overpairs to my 7 that are below the queen. He could still have some bluffs, but he could also just have a lot of strong hands. And I would honestly rather continue with hands that can improve more easily, like straight draws, flush draws, even combo draws. Y'all get the idea. But 7-6 of diamonds is just really, really tough to navigate on the river if we're up against a better hand. So I decide to get out of the way now. And luckily, it turns out to be the right decision as Airball has turned top pair. So we're exchanging blows here, but fortunately, we don't lose too much in this one. Now we get to the most WTF hand of this entire video, I think. I look down at 5-4 offsuit on the button and raise it up to 500. Probably a little bit too weak. I think maybe hands like 8-7 off or even 7-6 off are okay to raise on the button, but 5-4 off is just way too trash. But hey, PP now re-raises from the small blind with king 4 offsuit, so I guess any form of pre-flop discipline has gone out the window. Dr. P has 6-4 offsuit himself, so all the 4s seem to be dead. Anyway, it gets back to me on the button, and I decide to call, which is just a poor decision, really. Mainly, I was thinking to myself that PP is just way too wide in this spot, and I can navigate post-flop against him, try to win the pot somehow, and once in a while, we're going to bank something. But I think that sort of mentality is pretty weak, honestly. This is just impatience kind of seeping through after folding almost all my hands for like 3.5 hours. But anyway, we go to a flop of king, king, deuce with a flush draw out there. PP bets 1,500, and my opinion hasn't changed. I think he could have all sorts of garbage here, and I'm not expecting to be up against a strong hand. So I decide to float in hopes of stealing this one later on. Also not a great play, but here we go. Turn card is the Jack of Hearts. PP now bets again, $10,000, and this bet kind of pisses me off a little bit because I'm like, dude, I know you're bluffing. I know you have 10 high or 9 high or 8 high or 7 high or 6 high. I just can feel it in my bones. So my plan here is to call again. And I think once I make this call, since he overbet the pot now, it's going to look super strong to him. And then I can get away with a bluff on the river. Again, not loving this play looking back, but that's what I was thinking in the moment, and this is just a terrible turn call on my behalf. It's just stubborn. But I make the call, and just like that, we have almost 30,000 in the pot going to a river, which is a 7 of diamonds. It does bring in the front door flush. I do have a diamond in my hand, but it's not super relevant. And PP doesn't seem to be too bothered either, because he now bets $18,000 around 2/3 pot. And here's the thing, guys. I was still convinced that PP did not have a super strong hand. But PP has a lot of heart. So I was figuring, like, if he's bluffing the flop, turn, and river, I can't hero call with 5 high, right? The only way to win the pot is to re-bluff him off of queen high or 10 high or whatever. So that's what my plan was, and that's what I'm putting into motion here. Obviously, it's suicidal because he could have a king. He could have a full house. He could have a flush. And convincing myself that these are not realistic possibilities is simply foolish. But I'm giving you guys the real-time, play-by-play thoughts that were going through my mind. And so I stuck with my guns and I stuck with my reads, which I think for the most part are actually pretty spot on. I have a good feeling about, my intuition when it comes to these games. But this time, I was not correct, obviously, because PP has trips. But I make it $42,000 anyway. The price of a brand new Honda Accord with some sort of nice package like navigation or leather seats. I don't know. Either way, $42,000 has gone into the middle, and PP does not snap call, which looks great to me. But he doesn't snap fold, which is starting to bother me. And eventually I realize, oh man, he actually has something here. What have I done? Why didn't I just stick to my usual fundamentals? This is just awful. I burned $42,000. But I guess when you look at it from PP's shoes, this is a really difficult spot because on the surface, sure, you have trips. But at the same time, this guy has called you down on the button every street and now he's raising the river. What bluffs could he possibly have? I either have a flush, a full house, a better king. I don't know. I mean, I don't envy his spot whatsoever because if I were in his shoes, I would probably fold this. And it seems like PP agrees because after a few minutes, he lets it go. And somehow we get this ridiculous bluff through. Not really sure I love it, to be honest, but I do love the result because we end up winning $32,000 in the process. And the run good continues with a very fortunate result in what could have been an absolute disaster. And with that, we come to the last hand for tonight's video. In this one, there's a $400 double straddle on, a couple of limpers, and then Mike X makes it $2,000. I'm next to act on his left with ace-10 offsuit and decide to utilize this as a 3-bet bluff in position. I make it $6,000 to go. Everyone else folds, but when it gets back around to Mike, he decides that's not quite enough and bumps it to $17,000. Now let me go on record. I'll be the first to say ace-10 offsuit should be a fold in theory, but I have good rapport with Mike X. I like to give him action since he gives me a bunch of action, and I also have position, so against a guy like him, I'm getting in there and trying to crack whatever big hand he's got. So I toss in the money. Most of the time this isn't going to work, but this time it just might because we hit top pair, ace 5-3 rainbow. I'm going to be honest though, I was not loving it because I know damn well we could be up against ace king or ace queen suited. He would play those hands the same way pre-flop. So when he bets $8,000, I'm like, oh man, is this going to be one of those hands where I flop top pair with a hand that I shouldn't really have and then I double him up? Only one way to find out. I make the call, go into a turn card, which is the 6 of clubs. Mike X thinks for a bit and now checks, which of course he would do with pocket pairs below the ace, but I think he would also check top pair sometimes, even hands like ace jack or whatever, and I don't want to value on myself here with multiple bets and a 4-bet pot having ace 10. So I decide to check it back, and we go to the river, which is the 7 of clubs. Mike X checks again, and he's got 47k behind. There's 51 in the pot. I think to myself, is this too thin of a value jam? And honestly, it's been about 3 or 4 days since this session, and I'm still not sure what the answer is to that question. I could see arguments for betting here because we might get called by pocket kings or pocket queens, right? But I don't know. We're also going to get snapped off by ace king or ace queen from time to time, and yes, I do think Mike X might play those hands in this fashion, trying to get me to bluff or value bet a worse hand. So I go back and forth for a little bit and decide to just keep it chill and check it. Don't want to shove all in and get shown ace king. I would feel pretty foolish, so I just knuckle this one back and we end up winning versus kings. Worth saying, by the way, that not only do we have to have the best hand, we also have to get called by a worse hand. Having ace 10 offsuit in a 4-bet pot, I don't know. Another debatable situation. You guys can let me know in the comments. I'm sure we'll have plenty of experts chiming in, but this time I check it back and I'm not too upset. We collect a decent pot here in an undeserving way because pocket kings getting cracked by ace 10 offsuit doesn't feel very fair. Either way, that was the last interesting hand of this stream. As always, I hope y'all enjoyed. Stay tuned for some final thoughts. Well, I'm not in LA anymore. I forgot to film after dinner. I had a few too many drinks and ended up crashing. So this is actually a few days after the intro that you guys watched at the start of this video, but no matter because we're gonna recap what you guys just saw. There were some crazy pots across both of those streams, and it's a continued pattern this year that things have gone pretty well so far. I've definitely had years where things are off to a rocky start. Last year comes to mind where I think around this time, we're in May of 2025. I think around this time last year, I was stuck like 500K or something like that. I was on this big downswing. So this is a very nice contrast to that. I am up quite a bit of money so far this year, and we're not even halfway through, but you all know high stakes poker can be very swingy. So the money can go just as easily as it came. Fingers crossed that we continue the year on a strong note and close things out with some positive results, which as per usual, I will report at the end of the year. But until then, we have many more vlogs to come. As for this one, I ended up winning between both days somewhere in the neighborhood of $190,000. 150 the first day, 41 the second. Of course, this is a ton of money. It's not lost on me just how much it means to win such a big amount in essentially just a silly card game, but it's a game that I definitely love and I continue to, remain obsessed with. I still find it super interesting when I see hands online. I still strive to become better as a player than I was last year or even last month. So yeah, here's to hoping that the rest of the year goes well. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know there were a lot of hands, but I trust that that's not a problem for all you viewers out there. And if you don't mind helping me out, giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing if you haven't, trying to grow the channel a little bit more this year. That's also a goal of mine that I've been working towards. So anyway, that's it for today, guys. Thank you for all the support, and until next time, good luck at your local tables. I'll see you guys really soon. Peace.